We're moving on to social constructionism. Social constructionism. So the second paradigm of this chapter discuss social phenomenology Tuesday, social constructionism today, and ethnomethodology on Tuesday. All right, can you hear me okay in the back? Hear me okay in the back? Okay, good. All right, so moving on to social constructionism. And again, it's like social phenomenology. It's, it's sort of philosophy adjacent, I guess is an apt description. So there's a sort of a philosophical bent to it. Peter Berger and Thomas Luckmann, as I had mentioned before on Tuesday, Berger and Luckmann were students of Alfred Schutz at the New School for Social Research. So Alfred Schutz's first appointment was at the New School, and Berger and Luckmann were graduate students at that time and studied under Alfred Schutz. So a number of the ideas of Schutz, of course, wore off on Berger and Luckmann. And they, in 1966, published The Social Construction of Reality. The Social Construction of Reality, a treatise in the sociology of knowledge, which also gives you some insight as to what is the basis of any social reality. It's knowledge. It's what we agree to be true, right? That is the basis of any social reality. So what's different about Berger and Luckmann and how they approach the problem of facticity, right, is they're interested in identifying the processes by which social reality becomes, in particular, institutionalized or reified. It's different than Schutz because, as you may recall on Tuesday, Schutz, his effort is to identify what are the cognitive resources that individuals draw upon in order to achieve a state of intersubjectivity. And those are stocks of knowledge and recipes and typifications. That's the cognitive stuff, in other words. But this is different because they're talking about processes. What are the processes by which individuals, as members of groups, construct social realities? Social realities are different. What are they? Some might ask, are they social facts? Yes, social facts are social realities. Right? So we can trace really this back to Durkheim and Durkheim's insistence that sociology is the study of social facts. Social facts are uniquely of human origin. We create them. It's different than physical reality and biological reality. The social constructionists, and this is where I wish it was actually reworded. Had I been a colleague of theirs back in the 60s, I would have said, what about this? What about you call it the construction of social reality? Let's call it that. It's the construction of social reality. Because they're not arguing that human beings constructed the universe. They're not arguing that human beings created the universe and they've created all the biological species that exist. What they're arguing is that there is physical reality and there is biological reality, but there's also a different type of reality, a third reality, and that's called social reality. And that's the reality that you and I and other human beings create. It also means that when we perish and we no longer exist, poof, there goes social reality. Social realities die with their creators. So when we cease to exist, there is no more social reality on planet Earth because we're the only species that can construct it. We're the only species that creates political systems, that creates religious systems, that creates religious systems, that create, say, the institutions and the systems of sport. We create that. Those are distinctly human constructions. We brought them into being. So if we're not here, there's no social reality. It's as simple as that. Yes, natural reality persists, the universe persists, other biological species persist, great. But social reality is over. So it identifies the process by which human activity and society attain the character of objectivity. Again, just a refresher here, as we said on Tuesday, all three of these camps of theorists are interested in the phenomena of everyday life, right? In the reality of everyday life. Among multiple realities, there is one that presents itself as the reality par excellence. This is the reality of everyday life. A reality that we must attend to. Our obligations to one another is to respond to these social realities, right? As part of being here and now is an obligation to respond to things and matters that are present. So I apprehend the reality of everyday life as an ordered reality, like this. The social construction of classroom order. This is an ordered reality. The campus is a microcosm of society, and it's ordered and it's organized. And there are buildings, and there are halls, and there are departments, and there are offices. And there are people playing different roles, which each all have a function, right? It presents itself as an ordered phenomenon. What is occurring in this classroom and throughout the campus is not happening at random. Its phenomena, social reality, are prearranged in patterns. How did these patterns come to be? It appears to us, taking this as the social phenomenological view, that was encouraged by Schutz, seeing things through the eyes of the subject member of society. It appears to me, first person point of view, it appears to me already objectified. That is constituted by an order of objects that have been designated as objects before my appearance on the scene. We are born into a predefined reality. And the process of socialization is to learn what that reality is, and to learn how to exist in it, and to treat those realities as fact, as facticity. So reality in this process, it becomes taken for granted as reality, because it's real to others. It is simply there as self-evident and compelling facticity. I know that it is real, because the people that I observe treat those realities as real. They treat the rules of the game as real, and they often defend the rules of the game. Okay. So I like their particular approach to sociologists' interest in what is rather paradoxical here about social reality as an objective reality. So I've sort of broken it down for you here so it can help you better understand the significance and the interest in this question. As we stated on Tuesday, how does social reality attain the quality and the character of objectivity? Curiously, when you look up these two words, when you look up the word, find the definition for objectivity, and look up the word and find the definition of subjectivity, this is what you find. The strict definition of objective, we say an objective phenomenon. It means not dependent on the mind for existence. It is not dependent on the mind for existence. So the idea is that if I perish, or you perish, or we all perish, the universe does not perish with us. That the universe has an existence independent of each of us. So it's not dependent, it's not contingent. The existence of the universe is not contingent on your mind, it's not contingent on my mind. In fact, the universe predates the existence of any minds whatsoever and predates the existence of consciousness. But yet, when we shift our attention to social reality refers to the facts of life, peculiar to people that are dependent on their beliefs. And that is subjectivity. So the question is, how is it that a subjective phenomenon turns into an objective one? How does that happen? Because objective means not dependent on the mind for existence. We know social reality, and we'll unpack this, is dependent on people's beliefs, the beliefs that people share in common. That's the basis of any social reality. So it's a purely subjective phenomenon. What we believe to be moral or immoral, or right or wrong, and good and bad, etc., etc. These are contingent on our minds, our perceptions. That's purely subjective. But yet we encounter morality, Durkheim would say, not as a subjective phenomenon, but as an objective one. It doesn't feel as if it's made up. Like the people that die for moralities. They sacrifice themselves for morality, for a way of life. How is it possible that subjective meanings become objective facticities, they write? How is this possible? At the end of the day, isn't it all just made up? I remember a student said that to me years ago. I was teaching a social psychology class, and of course we discussed the topic of social constructionism, and she asked me during class, she said, so basically you're saying, or what they're arguing is that all this stuff is made up. And I'm like, yeah. But, what's interesting is we don't treat it as made up. We treat it as actually something that has an existence independent of us. That no, this isn't just my take on what's right or wrong. This is right or wrong. This isn't just my take on what is moral. This is moral and immoral. That's the character of objectivity. That you're not presenting it as this is one of many truths. You're presenting it as this is the truth. How did it get to be that way? Why is it treated as a facticity by you? Explaining its facticity requires an inquiry into the manner in which social reality is constructed. We can better understand why people die for their moralities and their ways of life if we understand the processes that lead them to believe that their moralities are facticities. And the only possible way they can be is their way. Says 1,000 different people in 1,000 different groups. Everybody says they're on the right side of history. And it's facticity for those that participate in those cultural worlds. But how did it become that? So that's what's different about Schutz, about what they're doing from Schutz. Schutz is cognitive resources. Berger and Luckman, it's the processes of reality construction. Berger and Luckman's theoretical model, it describes the basic processes of reality construction, how we get to a state of facticity. The most famous, or maybe you feel infamous, it's okay to be confused. It's okay to be confused. If all this just seems like I can't make heads or tails out of it. That's the natural response. Okay, that's the natural response. But this is the most famous statement that they make in this treatise. They write as 3 simple sentences. Society is a human product. Society is an objective reality. Man is a social product. Each one of those sentences corresponds to what they call a moment, or what we can also call a process of reality construction. These propositions refer to the following moments. Society is a human product refers to externalization. And don't worry, I'll define each of these concepts for you. What externalization means. Society is an objective reality. That refers to the phase or the stage of objectification. And the final process is internalization. That man is a social product. That one is not born a member of society, but rather one becomes a member of society. One is taught how to be a member of society. One learns how to become a member of society. It takes many, many years to become fully human in the social sense, meaning a participating member of society. It takes a considerable amount of training. As for institutionalization, reification, which those are also two concepts we'll get to, these are two forms of objectification, so they would fall under that second moment of objectification. So objectification involves institutionalization, and it involves reification, and reification is really the most extreme form of institutionalization, or, I mean, I don't want to give it away quite yet, but of the facticity, the immutability of social reality. If one comes to believe that social realities are immutable, you've reached the stage, or the phase, or the moment of reification. Okay, I hope you're still with me. I understand it's very jargonistic. I know, there's no way around it. It's all words, that's all we have. That's all sociologists have are words. Words that we call concepts, and concepts that are the basis of our theories. I'm fortunate. I've read this stuff for a while, but when I was an undergraduate, my mentor, my advisor, was Professor Watson, and she studied under Peter Berger when Peter Berger was at Rutgers. So she wrote her dissertation while she was at Rutgers, her PhD dissertation, under the guidance of Peter Berger, who was the chair of her committee. So, she told me all sorts of stories about Peter Berger, which is kind of cool. There you go, from Berger to Watson, me to you. How do you like that? Externalization, what does that mean? What does externalization mean? Don't overthink it. It's an important idea, but it's a simple idea. The idea is that social reality, whatever form it takes, social reality originates in the outward production and the creation of meaningful activity. So I had a student in office hours on Tuesday, and he asked, well, what is it? Are we talking about the production of meanings, or are we talking about the production of behavior? It's both. Meaningful activity. Right? It's both. The social reality is both the production of meaning, it's the production of beliefs about the world, but then also acting on those beliefs. The belief that the most legitimate form of political distribution and exercise of power is through democratic regimes in which individuals vote and participate in the democratic process. That's meaningful activity. Right? Meaningful activity. So both subjective meanings and habituated actions are projected into reality. That everything starts internally, and in cooperation with others, we produce systems of meaning. We produce, say, rituals and routine forms of behavior. Or if you think about prayer, it's prayer. Prayer is a meaningful activity. Prayer involves some object of worship to which it is directed. And prayer usually takes two forms. It takes the form of a request. Maybe you're going on some journey halfway across the world. And so before you commence your journey, you pray and you ask to an object of worship that your travel be protected. And then when you get to your destination safely, you pray in order to do what? To give thanks and to give gratitude. But you believe, as anybody who participates in prayer does, that somebody is listening. That there's some meaningful entity that exists in the transcendental realm, that is to say the spiritual realm, that is listening to you and responding to you. So we can say a religious order. Where do all religious orders come from? And all the elements of a religious order. Berger and Luckman are saying human activity. Human activity is responsible for the production of any religion or religious order. That's where all religions come from. Now, I'll try to convince a theologian of this. Good luck. The theologian is going to say to you, God created humankind. The sociologist is going to say to you, humankind created God. It's as simple as that. For the sociologists, they're not saying again that we created the physical universe, that we created every species of life that roams the planet. What they're saying is that what sociologists are saying is that human beings, humankind, created the notion of God or gods. That sacred stories are created. That mythologies are created. That rituals are created. They serve very important functions. But the point is that we made them up. The elements of a religious order, such as cosmology would refer to a story about the origin of the universe, and every major religion has a story that explains the origin of the universe and why we're here. Another element of the religious order is the supernatural, that again refers to a spiritual dimension. And it's the objects of the spiritual dimension that people pray to or communicate with, or also sacrifices. I didn't get a chance to bring this up when we were discussing social exchange theory. But sacrifice is one of the earliest forms of institutional exchange. Those that are sacrificing an animal are giving something of value to the gods in the belief that something good will be given in return. At the end of the day, though, it's the idea that you're exchanging with the supernatural. And you're exchanging things of benefit. That God on the other side gets the goat, and you get, a good harvest come spring. Moral codes and rituals, what we would call mores, or what the cultural anthropologists would call mores, rituals, owe their existence to creative human activity. That's the sociological take. Again, it's different than the take or the interpretation of the theologian. But the sociologist would say any religious order and all the elements of the religious order owe their existence to creative human activity. If we didn't exist, these religions would not exist. If we did not exist, then political systems and economic systems would not exist. Ideologies would not exist. Cultural institutions wouldn't exist. We create them. It's as simple as that. It's the process of externalization, of making real, of creating, and it's Marxian. Because Marx said in the German ideology that the most distinctive defining feature of the human species is our capacity to produce. That's what some say, oh, well, it's the properties of the mind, and others say it's the properties of spirit. And Marx says, actually, it's that we produce so much. It's the scale and the quantity of what we create. We create a whole lot of stuff, and not just material things, but we create social realities. So social order then is a human product, or more precisely, it is an ongoing human production. Any religion, if it hopes to stay alive, has to continue to be an ongoing human production. People have to continue to believe in it, and they have to continue to participate in its rituals and tell its stories. That's the production of reality, or what we might call the maintenance of reality. Just as how do you maintain a democratic order? Well, you have to continue to participate in it. It is produced by man in the course of his ongoing externalization. That is to say, it is made real through human activity. All social realities can only come into the world one way, and that's through human activity. If we just sort of shrug our shoulders and throw up our hands and say, oh, we're done with social reality, well then, then okay, then it's done. It's going to be hard to live in the world without creating some basic rules and principles of organization. Human beings have had to create a world that ensures social stability. So that is the first process of 3 in the social construction of reality. It starts with the recognition, the acknowledgement that the social orders that exist in the world and the different forms that they take, they are human constructs. They are products of human activity, that we created them. Now you might say, well, I didn't create the Christian religion. No, you didn't, but somebody did. Again, you're born into a predefined reality. There are important historical figures that played important roles in the creation of that theological system. So objectification, what does this refer to? Objectification. This is the process by which the externalized products of human activity attain the character of objectivity. That is the moment of objectification. When externalized products, externalization is a process by which we are doing the creating, we are doing the constructing, we are doing, other social constructionists like the term, the inventing, the bringing into the world. Then we move on to the next phase, which is it's an object in the world. It takes on the character of objectivity. Objectification involves both the processes of institutionalization and legitimation. So we have to break down in what institutionalization means. Some similar a term that's used, as we discussed on Tuesday, that one of Schutz's favorite terms was typification. So they incorporate this concept into their theorizing and their statement of objectification. Institutionalization occurs whenever there is a reciprocal typification of habitualized action by types of actors. When what something means to me, a particular type of behavior means to me, it's the same thing that it means to you. Social reality, they say, it attains true objectivity when there is symmetry and uniformity in the meaning of action. So professional sociologists say in order for a sociology degree to be conferred, students need to pass a course in sociological theory. And some colleges have one course, and other colleges, such as UCLA, have two. There's classical and there's contemporary theory. But every single department across the country, Department of Sociology says that for an individual to be conferred the degree of sociology, they must satisfy a course in social theory. That's an institutionalized reality. That means that that is a belief held in common among all professional sociologists, that this information is that important, that you must master it at a C or higher. So the social reality of what are the required courses of sociology attains objectivity when there is symmetry and uniformity in meaning and action, say among professional sociologists that say, no, as of now, you must take this course and you must satisfy the course. And you might just be very angry and say, well, why is that? Why do I have to take a social theory course? I hate theory. And they'll say, because that's our judgment and that's our belief. And we share that in common with one another. So it's real. It's an object. You can try to fight it, but sooner or later, you got to take that social theory course to satisfy the requirement. Because you're met with individuals who are in the Department of Sociology that are unified in meaning and action, that you must take this course in order to graduate. That's real. And this is what it is essentially what typification is, or as I call reciprocal typification. Typification is the conceptual process by which people organize their knowledge of the social world in terms of the typical features of persons, things, or events. Reciprocal typification refers to the following. What something is, the type of thing that it is the same to you as it is to me. Going back to the use of religion, because there's no better way to honor Peter Berger, who is a sociologist of religion. What's Christmas? Why do we celebrate Christmas? Among Christians, you celebrate Christmas because that was the day of the birth of Christ, who is understood to be the Son of God, the Messiah. What something is the same to you as it is to me, assuming there are individuals that share that belief and share that understanding. And then after Christmas in April, you have Easter. And what does Easter mean? And Easter is predicated on a set of beliefs, referring to the resurrection, etc., etc. That's reciprocal typification. What something is, what the holiday is, what the meaning of the holiday is predicated on shared beliefs. And we can talk about religious systems, we can talk about political systems, we can talk about legal institutions. The law is the law. There are institutional channels that we can use to modify laws if necessary. We just recently did that. I believe it was Prop 36 or Prop 37, one of the propositions that reversed the proposition from roughly 10 years ago or 8 years ago, as it relates to criminality. So the residents of California voted one way nearly a decade ago, and they've since reversed. Actually, that was the proposition that got the most votes. 70% of voters passed that proposition, which basically repealed the last proposition. So laws can be changed, and there are the appropriate processes and channels for changing laws. But once it's a law, right, then people will be sanctioned on the basis of that law. So it was once a felony, or it was, and then after the first change, then it becomes a misdemeanor, and then voters change their mind again, and it becomes a felony again. Okay? But anybody that's committed of an act that is now designated as a felony will be charged as a felon. And that person can't say, yeah, but just a year ago it was a misdemeanor. It doesn't matter anymore. That was a year ago. Now the law specifies that it's a felony. And so now it comes with a stiffer sentence. And that's it. And you will say, why does it have to be that way? Because there are people that are in their positions and in their posts precisely to defend the institution of law, from those that create it to those that enforce it. So they, using their dry sense of humor, the institution of law posits that heads shall be chopped off under specific circumstances. Under those circumstances, that's what happens. Heads are chopped off. Institutions control human conduct by setting up predefined patterns of conduct. And a segment of human activity has been institutionalized when it is subsumed under social control. Once it becomes the jurisdiction of somebody, and it's hard to find anything anymore that doesn't fall under somebody's jurisdiction of social control. What you can and what you can't say in the classroom. This is an institutionalized sphere. That there are rules, or what Parsons would call it's a normatively regulated environment. The institutional world is sustained by rules, it's sustained by roles, and it's sustained by resources. When members of any institution follow its rules, they are performing reciprocally typified and habitualized actions that sustain that institution. And when we encounter, you really, it's one thing to sort of to be in it and consent to it and accept it and say, I too agree that the way that the rules are, the way that the rules should be. That's a version of objectivity. But then there's that peculiar sense of objectivity when you encounter an institutional social reality that you want to change, but you can't quite change it. That what is it that stands in your way? It's other people that stand in your way. That you want to change the reality, but those people don't want the reality to be changed. And so you've got to contend with them. And then it just simply becomes, in Nietzschean terms, a battle of will. Who wants it more? This is the quality of objectivity. The child is encountering on it as the child's mind develops and they become more proficient and their understanding grows and their aptitudes grow. They encounter social realities as objective phenomena and they ask the question, but why? Why do you do it that way? Why do you do it that way? Particularly when they have a problem with that social reality. But why do we have to go to church every Sunday? It's the quality of objectivity, and then it's everybody at the congregation that says, well, that's what custom and tradition dictate. That from the part of the lure of Christianity, the Ten Commandments, they come from Moses on Mount Sinai, right? That's that whole, it's also part of the social construction. Any religious order is predicated on stories involving important historical figures. But why is it that we have to go to church on Sunday? Because it's the Sabbath. It's the day of rest. It's the day of worship. It's custom. It's tradition. And you say, but I don't want to. I want to watch cartoons. And everybody says no. It's a social reality that one must contend with. And you're going to have to accept the fact that you're going to Sunday service. And later, then you can watch, if you're good, you can watch cartoons. On to baseball. Is the strike zone real? Is the strike zone real? Meaning we were just talking about the importance of physical reality and biological reality and how social reality is different than those two realities. Well, I know that home plate is real. I can walk up to it and I can tap on it, I can touch it. I know it's real. You know, I know that bat is real. I can touch that bat too. It has a physical existence that's independent of me. The jerseys are real, the cleats are real, the helmet's real. That's a real person. That's a form of biological reality. But what about the strike zone? Is it real in the same way that the person is real? Is it real in the same way that the bat is real? According to the Major League Baseball, the strike zone is real. We know it's treated as an object in the world because it's recognized as an object in the world by official baseball rules. And this was the 2021 edition, and it's 173 pages. We're just talking baseball here, folks. It's that complicated. 173 pages devoted to the institution and the social reality of baseball. They give us a definition of what the strike zone is. It's also the power of words. Words are powerful because they create the very realities that they describe. I can tell you, I could lie to you, and I could tell you that I went to some distant place, and I can describe in detail all the features and characteristics of this distant place, and it becomes real in your mind. You go, well, I can't wait to go there. And I say, by the way, I just made that all up. I just use words to create a reality that then is described, right? Words are more than descriptive. Words are constitutive. They have the ability, the power to create things, to bring things into existence. As Peter Berger would say, bringing into existence the idea of heaven, bringing into existence the idea of hell. As far as we know, nobody's experienced it. I haven't experienced it. Most people I know haven't experienced it, but everybody has a notion of what it is. How is it something that exists if we haven't experienced it? Because we have a concept, we have an understanding of what it is that's constituted by words. The strike zone is that area over home plate, the upper limit of which is a horizontal line at the midpoint between the top of the shoulders and the top of the uniform pants, and the lower level is a line at the hollow beneath the kneecap. The strike zone shall be determined from the batter's stance as the batter is prepared to swing at a pitched ball, using words to make it real. And of course, we need to know what the strike zone is because that will help us then determine if a pitch is a ball or a pitch is a strike. What is a ball? A ball is a pitch which does not enter the strike zone in flight and is not struck at the batter. So again, we have to first establish what a strike zone is in order to identify what is a ball. And a strike is a legal pitch when so called by the umpire, which B is not struck at if any part of the ball passes through any part of the strike zone. So what we know is that in order to establish what a ball is and what a strike is, we have to know what a strike zone is. We have to treat the strike zone as if it is real in order to play the game of baseball. In order to play the game of baseball, all the members playing the game of baseball, from the pitcher to the batter, to everybody on the field, and particularly the umpire, it has to be, that strike zone has to be real to them to participate and perform the cultural activity of baseball. So is the strike zone real? You can't, it's not like a baseball bat or a helmet or a baseball or a plate. It doesn't have a physical existence that's independent of our consciousness. It's not like the individual batter who you can shake that individual's hand, who is biologically real. But it is, we would say, socially real. We perceive it as being real. And therefore it is real. The strike zone is part of the institution of baseball. It is real by virtue of participants submitting to its reality. According to Major League Baseball, you cannot play the game of baseball unless you have established the strike zone, because the strike zone will help you establish what is a ball and what is a strike. Just as, what is the meaning of prayer if you're not praying to an object of worship? What makes prayer meaningful is the thing that you're praying to, which you have to believe is real in order to see prayer as a meaningful activity. It's all contingent, right? It's all contingent. Participation in these social orders requires that we believe things to be real. And if we define situations as real, then they're real in their consequences. If we say this is a strike zone, and outside of the strike zone, and it's not swung at, it's a ball. If it's in the strike zone, not strung out, not swung at, then it's a strike. It's perceptual reality. So one way of thinking about social reality, then, is that it does largely exist in our minds. It's our perceptions of reality. That I perceive the transcendental to be real. That I perceive the strike zone to be real. And it's not just me in isolation, but it's the other people who also constitute that type of, say, athletic or religious order. So institutions, such as Major League Baseball, are now experienced as possessing a reality of their own. A reality that confronts the individual as an external and coercive fact. And you say, I hate this stupid strike zone. Maybe that's how pitchers feel. I can't stand this strike zone. It's too difficult to throw a strike today. Maybe you'll argue with the ump and say, I don't think the strike zone's real. Prove to me the strike zone's real. It's not there. I can't see it. You can't see it. It's not real. But the ump is going to defend the institution of baseball, defend its rules, and say, no, you're wrong, it is there. And everybody here playing the game believes it's real except for you. Only in this way, as an objective world, can the social formations be transmitted to a new generation. You've got to convince the next generation that what you say is real is in fact real. And this is a challenge for every parent. And it's a challenge for every institution. To convince the next generation that the previous generation's objectifications of reality are in fact legitimate. And they're in fact true. And they're in fact defensible. And that you should internalize these and defend them as well. And this is just, by the way, just one iteration, as I said on Tuesday, of a way in which you can play a sport. Competitive physical activity governed by rules. There are many different ways of doing that. Baseball is one way, football is another way, basketball is another way, volleyball is another way. Wow, we've invented so many sports, exactly as we've invented so many religions, and we've invented so many political systems, and we've invented so many economic systems. It's the same idea. We keep creating new games. And we insist that the rules of our game are, in fact, the rules, and the best rules. Just as any professional athlete, it was a snub. I was watching the NFL. It was after the World Series, and it was some analysts were talking about football, and of course, so many people were watching the Yankees and the Dodgers games series. And so the analysts were talking about NFL, and they said, well, the NFL football, it's a real sport. Not like that baseball. Of course, football players and people that are part of the institution of football are going to defend that institution, that version of physically competitive, rule-governed activity as the most legitimate form. Baseball is not as good as football. The child is quite incapable of distinguishing between the objectivity of natural phenomena and the objectivity of the social formations. You can think of many encounters that I've had with my friends' children at a very young age. They're quite insistent that they know what they're talking about. Oh, no, this is the way that it's done. But you're 4 years old. You sure are certain about that at age 4. They're incapable of distinguishing between, say, the reality of a physical thing and the reality of a social thing. That for them, the social thing is just as real as the physical thing, because that's how their parents treat it. Their parents treat it as just as real. So there are bad words, and you can't say those bad words. And if I catch you here saying those bad words, right, it's real to them because their parents have told them that it's real, and they've also sanctioned that deviant behavior. So if they say a bad word, then they get some form of reprimand. And it's the reprimand and it's the sanction that then makes that social reality real. And so they're able to distinguish between the reality of bad words from words that aren't considered bad. But it's a curious thing, right? Why did we ever make up bad words to begin with? Why? Why did we ever invent bad words? Why do we have curse words? Why don't we just dispense of all bad words? I mean, there's words that are insulting, but then there are words that they're not insulting, but we consider them bad words. We consider them foul. But why did we ever create a category of foul language? Did we have to create a category of bad language? Language appears to the child as inherent in the nature of things. A thing is what it is called, and it could not be called anything else. And that thing that you just said is a bad word, and I'm 4 years old, and I know what I'm talking about. If you say so, that's an objective social reality. Durkheim's aphorism, social facts are things. They are external to the individual and exist independently of any individuals. None of these social orders can be reduced to any single individual. You can't reduce the institution of baseball to any single individual. You can't reduce Christianity or any other religious system to one individual. They exist externally to any individual. You're born into the world. You do not yet understand religious systems, but over time you internalize these understandings. But they are external to you when you're born into the world. They exist in the minds of significant others who constitute your community. All of these things, as we said on Tuesday, morality, law, norms, language, these are social facts. These are realities sui generis of our own making. People created them. No more human species, no more morality. No more human species, no more laws. No more norms, no more traditions, no more customs, no more language, it ends. So that is, just to be clear, what a social reality is. We make it. We make it up. We have reasons. I don't want to, and they're not making the argument that when we create social realities, we do it sort of willy-nilly or arbitrarily, and that serves no purpose and no interest. That's not true at all. These social realities do serve interests. Religion is as Berger pointed out, is a form of social control. That may be sort of a pessimistic way of assessing it, but it is a form of social control. So the institutional world, then, it is experienced as an objective reality. We experience as an objective reality. We don't experience as, oh, well, that's just all made up. You've got to contend with the people, hang out with somebody that's in a cult for a while, and you approach as an outsider and you go, oh, God, you guys are all crazy. Well, hang out with them for a couple months and see how you feel. You might start to come around. You might start to feel, hey, I think they're onto something here. All major world religions start as cults. I mean, that's one of the reasons of the crucifixion, of the execution. He was executed according to Roman law on the basis of treason. Christ committed treason against the state and persecuted under Jewish law as a religious heretic. Who is this guy running around calling himself the Son of God? You got to get rid of this guy. He's a troublemaker. And all the people that followed were considered part of a religious cult. And 2 millennia later, it's not considered a cult anymore. Because it becomes institutionalized over time. Cathedrals are built. Churches are built. Bibles are written. They are transcribed. They are reproduced. They are taught. Rituals are performed. And suddenly you have an institutionalized reality that does not present itself in its original form as cultish. It feels completely, entirely legitimate. And those origin stories sound like, okay, that could be. The product acts back on the producer. Legitimation is an important part, particularly as it refers to those that question and those that resist. But wait a minute, why do we do it this way? I mean, why do we have to have a strike zone? Because if we don't have a strike zone, and why do we have 3 balls and 2 strikes? Why that? Why not 10 balls? Whatever it might be. And then somebody will say, yeah, but we'll be here all day. My wife can't stand how long baseball is. There are sports that have clocks and sports that don't. Baseball has no clock. And it can go on, it can go on, it can go on, it can go on. Some might say, well, this count of 3 and 2 is actually the best because it ends up meaning that most games are 2.5 to 3 hours long and no longer. Good, done. It has a reason. They're not suggesting that social realities are entirely arbitrarily and serve no purpose. They do serve a purpose. At the same point, the institutional world requires legitimation, ways in which it can be explained and justified by those who defend it. Recently in baseball, they introduced a pitcher's clock. No? I don't know exactly when that was first pitched. No pun intended. Dad joke. When does a joke become a dad joke? When its punchline becomes apparent. You need to be, you're slouching, you're sleeping. I got to wake you up a little bit. Legitimation justifies the institutional order by giving normative dignity to its practical imperative, giving dignity to the dad jokes. Why do we still tell them? I don't have a punchline for that one. I don't. The show is, the comedy show is officially over. That's all I got, folks. That's all I got. Back to social theory. The problem of legitimation, they tell us, it inevitably arises when the now historic institutional order are to be transmitted to a new generation. It is maybe no longer self-evident as to why this institution, its understandings of the world, should be passed on. Just in a way that we don't, Peter Berger was also the one who proposed the secularization hypothesis, as I mentioned earlier, and that's why I'm using so many religious examples, because he was a sociologist of religion. He proposed that with time, society would entirely be secularized. And later in his life, he lived a long life, well into his 90s, he admitted, at the end of my life, religion hasn't disappeared. What's happened in the United States is we have a plurality, a coexistence of many different types of religion. But in fact, it hasn't disappeared, and we haven't entirely secularized a society. There are still people that are devoutly religious. But it has been more and more difficult, say, for ministers and pastors and rabbis and the like, to convince subsequent generations to become believers and to participate in a religious organization. The attitude among your generation is, well, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual, sort of thing. Sort of thing. Like, I don't want to have to deal with all the obligations of religion, but I still, I'm agnostic. I still think something exists, that sort of thing. But, I would just say a major challenge, and I know this just from being an educator, the major challenge when trying to convince the next generation of the legitimacy of a religion is that there are other institutions that are vying for the attention of individuals. Meaning, religion used to be the only game in town. Religion used to be, that's my grandparents would say, well, God, growing up on the farm, they'd say, that's really the only thing we had to look forward to. There was nothing else going on. I mean, you're just working in the fields 6 days a week, and then finally, it's Sunday, you get to go talk to people. And you get to socialize a little bit. But now we have so many different distractions, and there's so many other things that you could be doing. In my sociology of sport class, we talk about, could it be that the NFL has played a role? All NFL games are on Sunday. Has the NFL played a role in pulling people away from church services because they want to be home to watch the Chargers and the Rams? So it's on the pastors, it's on the priests, it's on the ministers to explain why this institutional order exists and why people should continue to maintain the social reality of the institution. Legitimation relies on linguistic signification. As I was saying, that the language has the power to describe the very realities that they create. It's constitutive. And it's our access, our ability to use, and I know we've talked about this a lot so far, but it's our ability to use significant symbols to create shared meanings, to create ideas, to create ideologies that then can be shared in common with others and treated as if they are objectively real. The objectivated meanings of institutional activity are conceived of as knowledge and transmitted as such. And we get to reification, which is, again, the most extreme form of objectification. A final question has to do with the manner in which the institutional order is objectified. How do we know we've arrived at the moment of reification? When we no longer see a social order, whatever that order may be, again, it may be political, maybe it's religious, maybe it's economic, that we no longer see its origin in human activity. That we forget somewhere along the line that we made it up. Again, by we, I don't mean you or me, I mean our ancestors made it up. To what extent is an institutional order, any part of it, apprehended as a non-human facticity? This is the question of the reification of social reality, meaning you arrive at the stage of reification when you treat something as a non-human facticity. As if you say, no, I don't think this. I read through the Holy Bible. I don't think the Holy Bible is a consequence of human activity, even though there's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, chapters in the New Testament. I don't see this as being a consequence of human activity. I see this as being the Word of God, the end. Well, if that's your view of it, which is fine, I'm not arguing against that. But Berger and Luckman would say that's a moment of reification, that you no longer see it as a human construction. You no longer see it as flowing out of human activity. You see it as something independent of human activity. But what Berger and Luckman are telling us is any social reality originates out of human activity. That's what makes it a social reality. So reification then is the apprehension, that is to say it's the understanding of human phenomena as if they were things that is non-human or possible superhuman terms. But no. Human beings didn't create this religion. This religion is the will of God. Okay, you can believe that. But the sociologist isn't going to approach it that way. The sociologist is going to see all social realities as tied to meaningful human activity. And that we wouldn't have this religion if we didn't have human beings. Just as we wouldn't have the institution of baseball without human beings. Nobody's arguing that the institution of baseball was divinely created or divinely inspired. Maybe one day they will, I don't know. If the Dodgers keep winning World Series, maybe Dodgers fans will believe. As if they were something else than human products, such as the facts of nature. Results of cosmic law or manifestations of divine law. Again, if somebody wants to apprehend social phenomena in such a way, if they really want to believe that their morality exists independently of their mind, they're free to do that. They're free to think of it as an objective phenomenon. Of course, Nietzsche's take, who was doing a type of cultural sociology, said all value systems are made up, and they're all invented, and all moral systems, from the master morality to the slave morality, are invented. There you go. So reification, I like this particular formulation of the idea, of the concept. It implies that man is capable of forgetting his own authorship of the human world. we would say it's absolutely absurd if you would have football players and baseball players and soccer players killing themselves over which game of sport is more virtuous. We would say, wait a minute, don't you understand? You've made up all of them, and you can play these different games at once if you want to. There's no reason to say one type of physical contest is superior to another. And further, that the dialectic between man, the producer, and his products is lost to consciousness. The reified world is, by definition, a dehumanized world. Because suddenly, poof, there are no more people. We have these social realities, but we forgot that how these realities got here is through people, through meaningful human activity. That's the state of reification. Werder and Luckman is saying we need to be reminded that we created these social realities, and what they hope that we can do is have some ownership of them and some control over them, and if they need to be changed, we can change them without diminishing the integrity of them. Okay, I know we're a little bit behind. One slide. I mean, just this, and it's really, I've already really talked about this process previously, and if you've taken and I trust you have, taken an introduction to sociology class, you already know what this concept refers to. Right? As I said earlier, the individual is not born a member of society. He is born with a predisposition to sociality, and he becomes, through socialization, a member of society. It's during the process of socialization that one is exposed to social realities, and with time internalize those social realities as facticities. That's it. Right? They talk about primary, secondary socialization, but it's really basic. And this is how the importance of internalization is that social realities, if they are to persist through time, have to be internalized by the next generation. You know, just as every generation sees that the next generation understands the legitimacy of democracy and the democratic process, because you win some and you lose some. But if you believe in the integrity of the institution, the importance of that social reality, you'll find a way to live through the losses so you can get to potentially one of your wins. This occurs when the meanings of the objective social world become subjectively meaningful. They are adopted as one's own. That individual then is a carrier of those social realities and then transmitted to the next generation and sustained through time. But that's it. That's the process. I'll post these slides, and if you have any questions, of course, about any of these concepts or any further clarification,